I've listened to Dear Wormwood by the Oh-Hellos for years.
And I listened to it once yesterday.
Welcome to Spin It. Oh, hello. Welcome back to Spin It, the record-ranking podcast for people who would rather be listening to music. I'm James, and with me is Connor. Say oh hello to the people.
Oh, hello, people. And James.
And me. I'm part of the people.
That's right, you are. I'm not.
Yes, you are. You're their champion.
Yeah, which separates me from them.
Oh, okay. I see. Yes, that's right. It's another week, and we've got another album. This time, it's the folky Dear Wormwood by the Oh-Hellos. You ready for some folk?
Boy, am I.
Good. I guess we should have said say hello to the folks, because that's,
Oh,
that fits better. But it's okay.
that would have been good.
Would have been. Missed opportunity. I don't remember the last time we talked about an album quite like this, in the folk vein.
Well, we did The Head and the Heart. They were folk.
Yeah, that's true. The Arcadian Wild was pretty close.
The Arcadian Wild was pretty folky.
Episode 123.
We did that one dude.
Noah Khan.
Yeah, Noah Khan, that's it.
He's a little folk poppy. Yeah. So we've been here a few times, but it's been a bit.
We've been to the land of folk a few times.
That is true. And we're back. Is this the first time you've heard of the Oh-Hellos?
Yes.
Fantastic. Brand new band for the Year of Healing. I feel like I had heard of them, but I found them through a YouTube suggestion, which is rare because I don't really spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos. I think maybe I even saw it on the podcast YouTube channel, and I don't know, it just got recommended to me, and I was like, I've heard of this. But I gave it a listen, I liked it a lot, and I just feel like this is a good time of year for folky kind of music. It's spring-ish, I guess summer. Everything's blooming and blossoming, nature. I don't know. I feel like a lot of things on this album kind of go hand in hand with that, like the way of things and There Beneath. It just felt right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the Oh-Hellos. If this is your first time hearing about them, or if it's not, maybe you'll learn something. The Oh-Hellos are an indie folk duo from San Marcos, Texas. It's a duo made up of siblings Tyler and Maggie Heath, although they're usually accompanied by a whole cast of extra musicians, though. Sometimes they perform with up to 13 other musicians on stage with them. So it's a party. It's a big musical entourage with the core Oh-Hellos siblings. Tyler actually started making music on his own back in 2007, and he put out 3 solo albums over the course of a few years. They started making music together in 2011. They got together to co-write a birthday song for their mother, and it went really well. They actually loved it, and they said, let's keep doing it. Let's keep it going. And that's how they became the Oh-Hellos. Their first self-titled EP came out the same year, 2011, and by late 2012, they would release their first proper album called Through the Deep Dark Valley. Also, side note, I feel like the Oh-Hellos just have some of the most hardcore album and song names that you've ever heard of for music that like fits, but very curiously. We're stumbling through some like dark, twisted high fantasy world with all their song titles. It's kind of fun. Did you get the fantastic vibes?
Yeah.
Good. And that's just another element of their music that I really like, the high fantasy kind of style of it. We'll talk more about their inspirations, especially for this album, and, you may be surprised to learn about them. You may not be, who knows. Anyway, they did Through the Deep Dark Valley, which was very deep and dark and valley-ish. One Christmas EP later, in 2015, it was time for the Oh-Hellos' second album and the one we're talking about today, Dear Wormwood. It came out on October 16th, 2015, and it's a bit of a concept album. I mean, not a bit, it just is a concept album. It's inspired by C.S. Lewis. I mean, speaking of high fantasy, he's one of the high fantasy kind of OGs. He wrote The Chronicles of Narnia, which is probably a big contributor as to why this feels like a Fantasyland kind of album. You're familiar with Narnia, right?
Yeah, very much so. Less so the books than the movies.
Well, but see, they haven't made movies for all the books,
I know.
right? They only did the first 3? No, they did...
4.
I don't think
right?
they did A Magician's Nephew. I think they started with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe,
Yep.
and then they did Caspian, and then they did The Dawn Treader.
Yep.
Did they make a 4th one?
They did. I feel like...
Oh, it looks like they did The Silver Chair.
Yeah. I thought they did a 4th.
I didn't know that. That's cool. Actually, The Silver Chair was one of my favorites of the books. I just read them not all of them for the first time, but most of them for the first time like a year ago. Loved them. The Silver Chair ended up being one of my favorites. I had previously read The Magician's Nephew and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I really enjoyed them. But of the movies, I've only ever seen The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Oh, really? You've only seen the original movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2008 they did Prince Caspian, and in 2010 they did The Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Oh, wait, no, yeah, The Silver Chair was canceled. That sucks.
Yeah, I've seen all three, but like the third one I was barely watching. Nothing beats the original.
No, it's a classic. Still never had Turkish Delight, but if I ever have the chance.
Oh, I have.
Is it delightful?
So Turkish Delight comes in like a bunch of different flavors. And so like the fruity flavors of Turkish Delight are quite delicious.
Okay.
Regular Turkish Delight, that's not like the fruity ones, mid.
Mid. It was good enough for Edmund to get kidnapped for.
Yeah, but the ones that Edmund are eating are like bright red, which make it look like one of the fruity ones that is quite delicious. So I'm not too worried about it.
Gotcha. Well, as much as The Chronicles of Narnia is excellent, and you should check it out, and definitely that's a big, reference point for C.S. Lewis and his style and his works. This album is actually more specifically based on his little concept satirical epistolary novel called The Screwtape Letters. Yeah, it was first published in 1942, and it's actually dedicated to J.R.R. Tolkien. A little more fantasy. Lewis and Tolkien were like writer buddies. They go way back. The book is a series of 31 fictional letters from the point of view of a demon writing to his nephew named Wormwood, hence Dear Wormwood. Lewis kind of uses it as a study of Christian theology and this examination of temptation and evil in the world. It actually went on to be one of his most popular works outside of the 7 Chronicles of Narnia books, even though he said that The Screwtape Letters was, quote, not fun to create. And after he wrote a little sequel to it, he vowed to never write another letter because it just was a lot for him to try and get into the minds of these characters. Also, fun fact about The Screwtape Letters, one of the most famous audiobook adaptations of the novel is narrated by John Cleese from Monty Python, and it was nominated for a Grammy.
Oh.
So C.S. Lewis has a Grammy-nominated book.
That's awesome.
It is cool. So that's like the primary inspiration for this work. I actually, in between picking this album for the podcast and now, I've read through the Screwtape Letters, or listened through it on audiobook. Not the John Cleese one, but one nevertheless. But to a lesser extent, right, they used this, but to a lesser extent, they drew from the work of author Patrick Rothfuss, whose magnum opus is the ongoing Kingkiller Chronicle. That one I haven't read, but it's also another like fantasy work, kind of like Game of Thrones-ish, I think, in scope, just like a lot of long books,
Sure.
But every track on the record, every different song from Dear Wormwood is meant to be its own letter from someone in an abusive, unhealthy relationship writing to their abuser. So it kind of mirrors that epistolary style, but it's this really intense concept right off the bat. That framework of like putting this album in letter form really gives them a lot of avenues to take the narrative and to explore the dynamics of these characters. What they say is this album is a collection of letters all written by a single protagonist and addressed to a single recipient, a conversation to which the listener is an observer as a relationship gone wrong reaches its breaking point. The words and music are at times affectionate and bittersweet, at others resigned and resolute. So that's cool. People also consider Dear Wormwood to be a conceptual sequel to their debut, Through the Deep Dark Valley. The first was meant to be about this character's past, while Dear Wormwood is more future-focused. So that's really neat.
Yeah.
I love a discography-wide concept that's so tough to execute, but really fun when people can do it. Adele kind of does it with her age-numbered albums. We've talked about a few artists with multiple album spanning concepts, and I just always think that's really fun.
Yeah.
Their musical style, it's really light, really string based, which I love. They're both great instrumentalists. It's very folksy, very Celtic inspired, which I think maybe is a good Year of Healing edition for you. You've kind of talked highly about Celtic type music in the past once or twice, and so I was like, what can I give you that's kind of in that vein,
Only time will tell.
I guess. Is it a thing you like, Celtic music? Not necessarily this.
I like all music.
I don't know if that's true.
Name a genre of music I don't like.
Well, you gave Kid Cudi a 1.
Doesn't mean I don't like his genre.
Well, that's true. If we're going that general, yeah, I guess there's not a genre of music you won't find something to like in.
I'm also just because I gave one Kid Cudi album a 1 doesn't mean I won't find like a different Kid Cudi album.
That's true.
Don't try to stereotype me.
I'm not.
Don't put me in a box.
I'm not. I'm just trying to give you music types that are different that I think you'll like, especially.
No, that's fine. You said you didn't think it was true when I said I like all music.
That's true. I did directly contradict that statement from you of your tastes and preferences.
And I had to make you look foolish for it. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
You brought it upon yourself.
I did. So the Celtic style, right. People have also really praised the contrast between the tone of their music, right? The light, happy, plucky kind of sound of it, and then the weight of their lyrics. I mean, as we talk about this abusive kind of relationship, there are times where the sound of the music is almost totally incongruous with what they're saying. And there are times where it fits really well together. I don't know, we'll go through it. Other Dear Wormwood facts, obviously they wrote and recorded the entire album themselves, with the one exception of Danse Macabre, which was written in 1874 by Camille Saint-Saëns. Probably that has a different pronunciation. I think it's French, but you get the idea. The album did pretty well critically. It earned a 3.5-star rating from AllMusic and an 8 out of 10 from Glide magazine. It also managed to peak at number 134 on the Billboard 200, which is awesome for a self-made independent record. Pretty big. Since Dear Wormwood, the Oh-Hellos have put out 4 proper albums, a complete remaster of their debut Through the Deep Dark Valley, and one more family Christmas EP just last year in 2023. I don't really have any other trivia tidbits about the Oh-Hellos, but like I mentioned, the way I found them was through some of their live content and live performance videos, and they're great. I really enjoy their live style. They did a Tiny Desk session with NPR, and it's awesome. Go check that out. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, that's me. That's what I've got. Now you know a little more about the Oh-Hellos. And now it's time to say oh hello to the mixtaper, our favorite dastard. You ready for Factor Spin? How do you think I'm going to do this week?
Yeah, I'm ready for my break. It's really not fair that you do all this legwork up front and then I'm the one that takes a break while you have to continue to do work.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we've ever addressed.
I really get exhausted in this first third of the podcast.
When you listen to me talk about the artist.
And need to take a break.
Then you gotta take a break. I bore you that much? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, go take your break. Go grab a snack. Go kick your feet up and enjoy the show as I square off against the mixtaper and try and figure out what's true about the Oh-Hellos and what's not.
Yeah, I've got some popcorn that's almost ready.
Ooh, what flavor popcorn?
Popcorn flavor.
Ooh, that's the best kind.
All right, well, I'm going to get my popcorn.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have fun with your popped corn. Hey, mixtaper, get on in here. Move that bus.
Hey, it's me. Oh, wait. I can do better. Oh, hey. Instead of oh, hello.
Instead of oh, hello, it's O-A. It's you.
Because my version of hello is A.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, A. It's me.
It's 2 vowels put together. Sure. Welcome back to the podcast, mixtaper.
Good to be back.
Good to have you. I'm excited for Oh Hello's Facts and Spins. This is another situation where I really don't know what you could have found, but that could mean anything. It could mean we got a lot of fun spins, or it could mean you got a lot of deep cut facts.
Maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe a mix, yeah.
For them, everything's bigger in Texas.
Ooh, what a first fact title. Well, everything's bigger in Texas is a known trope, right? And they're from Texas. So, I don't know, what's bigger for them? What's everything?
Everything.
Okay, like their fan base? Like
the world, just the world.
The world is bigger in Texas?
Well, just the world is smaller outside of Texas.
Okay, I don't know what you're talking about.
Tyler said growing up in Texas, he felt it was just this huge, all-encompassing place, and it just always felt so big.
All-encompassing?
Yeah, that's the word I was struggling to say.
Okay.
And having a music career, doing some traveling, performing, he's realized how interconnected and small the world really is. But whenever he travels back home to Texas, he still gets that sense of grandioseness.
I don't think that's a word either, but that's okay.
I'm just making up words this week.
Guess so. It's going to make it harder for me. It's a spin. Grandioseness isn't a word. Wow, that'd be mean. I think that makes a lot of sense. Texas is huge. Like, do you realize how big Texas is?
Yeah, I mean, you can fit at least one Texas in the size of Texas.
It's Texas-sized. Yeah. How many pieces of Texas toast do you think it would take to cover the state of Texas?
Ooh, that's a very achievable number to figure out.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is get the average width and length of a Texas toast and look up the size of Texas.
And then we could know it.
Do the math.
Texas is pretty big, is my point. It would take a lot of Texas toast. But there it's just toast.
It's true.
I'm sure it feels like a big place when you're a kid, especially when you can't like drive or travel anywhere and you're kind of limited to where your parents take you. Where has he visited? Like, is there anywhere in particular that's made it feel like a smaller world?
I don't know. The rest of the world?
I don't know. The world? Yeah, sure. I kind of got to agree. I do a fair bit of travel, and the world sometimes feels pretty small. Although every time I am traveling, the world feels way too big because everything is so far away. I think this is a fact. I think for them, everything is bigger in Texas, and the world feels smaller outside. And I think when they go back to Texas, the stars at night are big and bright.
Aw. This is a spin.
Really, something so simple as this is a spin. Uh-oh.
I hadn't given you a simple one in a while. I hadn't given you a simple spin.
Wow.
And I really just wanted to make an everything's bigger in Texas joke this week.
That seems like, it felt like this everything's bigger in Texas joke was shoehorned in because he said this quote about the world feeling small when he traveled. Like, that felt so real to me. And I thought that the forced joke was everything's bigger in Texas. So you kind of doubled up on that one. Oh, wow.
I shoehorned the shoehorn.
Yeah. Darn. Ah, shoot. I feel really bad about that.
Gotta be tricky with you.
Darn. What's next? Get me outside of Texas. I need something bigger.
Something bigger?
Yeah. Well, the rest of the world is bigger than Texas.
Okay. Actually, I think this is smaller, but I think this is technically smaller, but it feels like it should be bigger.
Okay.
They are Irish citizens.
Ooh, that's a fun one. Why did they become Irish citizens? If they love Texas and the world outside is small. I don't know. Well, that was a spin. Anyway, I guess I should discount everything we just talked about because it wasn't true.
Well, it was based a little bit in truth. They're from Texas.
Right. Okay, so how does Irish citizenship work? Is there like a birthright Irish citizenship where...
Well, this is technically like honorary Irish citizenship.
Okay. Well, like I wasn't sure...
They don't have like any voting rights or anything like that.
Well, no. Right, because they don't live in Ireland.
Right.
But sometimes if your parents or grandparents are from a country and citizens there and you get, literally grandfathered in, that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But what's their situation? If they're honorary citizens, is this something that they haven't had all their lives?
Yeah, well, they have Irish heritage,
Mm-hmm.
and they've done some, folk Irishy motifs in their music.
Absolutely.
And as part of that creative process of learning about Irish folk, they did a deep dive into their Irish heritage.
They became Irish folk.
Yeah, honestly, in a way, because during the deep dive, they talked with a lot of like Irish historians about like where their family came from and stuff like that, and discovered that apparently Ireland they're really forthcoming with their citizenship. They'll just give it to just about anybody who can show that they've got some Irish heritage.
Whoa.
If you have Irish heritage, you can apply to be an honorary citizen of Ireland. And so they said, why not? And they did it.
If your blood runs green. Yeah, okay. So they've been to Ireland. They've done the deep diving. So they're dual citizens then? U.S. and Ireland?
I don't think technically, because they're not technically Irish citizens, right? This is an honorary citizenship given
Right,
to people who have Irish heritage but aren't Irish citizens.
Okay.
So
Does it come with any rights and privileges? I mean, aside from not voting and not living there.
at least one
Yeah? What's the one?
to say you're an honorary Irish citizen.
Oh,
it's a privilege. Only Irish citizens.
Yeah, literally just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know much more about it.
They get to celebrate St. Patrick's Day a little harder. I think this one's also a spin.
Also a spin.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard about Ireland being, as you say, rather forthcoming with citizenships, I guess. And I think that may be a thing that you found out about and liked, and you took that Celtic-inspired music, and maybe they do really have Irish roots.
Just out of curiosity, I love it when you tell me your rationale behind this stuff, because sometimes you say things like, you found out Ireland is forthcoming with citizenship, and I want to know in your brain what that process looked like. How do you think I found out that Ireland just gives out citizenship all willy-nilly?
Well, I don't know. The same way that you find out that Minnesota lets you hunt unicorns. You know what I mean? I feel like you've had a conversation with someone about it or come across it in like some other podcast or some other way. Like,
fair enough.
it's just you found it. I don't know. Or maybe when you found out they have Irish heritage, you looked into it and found it that way. I mean, there's other avenues that you could have known about it.
Sure.
I just don't think it's true.
Fair enough. Locking in spin.
I'm going to lock in spin.
This is a spin.
Woohoo! I knew it. Okay, how'd you find out about the Irish citizenship thing then, mister? Tell me.
I actually don't know if Ireland just gives out citizenship to anybody.
Oh, maybe I just made that up. Somebody does. I've heard about that from some country.
A radio interviewer made the joke about it because they said they do know they have some Irish heritage, but they don't think it's enough that they'd feel comfortable claiming it to be a huge part of who they are. And then the radio host said, why not claim it? Ireland will take anyone. And I thought that was a funny joke, and so I turned it into a spin.
Well, it is a funny joke, but here it says naturalization or ancestry are the two ways you can establish Irish citizenship, and it says ancestry is extremely easy.
Fair enough. So it sounds like that I could get this, for once I could get this point back if they go and get...
If they do it?
Irish citizenship.
Yeah. It says you need to prove that exactly what I said. You're the child or grandchild of Irish citizens. You also may qualify if you have a great-grandparent from Ireland, but your parents also have to have done some stuff then. I don't know. It's definitely possible, I think.
Interesting.
And not too far-fetched if they have recent Irish heritage that they could totally get citizenship. But also, that's not honorary citizenship. That's like you're an Irish citizen.
I mean...
You'd have to be a dual citizen if you wanted to go that route, I think.
Fair enough.
That was fun. That was cool. Get to learn a little bit about Irish ancestry.
Yeah.
Is that smaller than Texas being big?
I think, I think Ireland's smaller than Texas.
Oh, yeah, certainly it is. But citizenship feels like a big deal.
Oh, maybe. Bigger deal than this? They've been on Broadway.
Now that's a pretty big deal. In show business, that's huge. You told me this fact about someone before, too. Was it Tina Turner?
I think I've used it a couple times.
Yeah, it's come up. So, like, Broadway in New York?
Yeah.
Okay, and as performers in a theater there, in a show, in a something?
Yes.
Okay.
That is accurate.
Just want to make sure this fact isn't like they went and saw The Lion King one time, you know? Like, I wouldn't put it past you.
They physically set foot on Broadway.
Yeah. I've been on Broadway. Woo! What were they doing on Broadway? Was this for like a show or a tour, or was this something more?
Yeah, it was a show.
What kind of show?
A comedy show.
A comedy show that they were hosting or a part of?
A part of.
Who hosted it? What's the occasion?
The occasion is they're putting on a comedy show.
Right. Okay, so it just happens to happen.
They decided to go see the show and then got invited up on stage.
Oh, they weren't originally going to be a part of the show? This was spontaneous?
Oh, no. Yeah.
But whose show was it?
The Oh-Hello show on Broadway.
The Oh-Hello show. Oh. So, like, the Nick Kroll and John Mulaney comedy show?
Yeah.
I know they did a run on Broadway. That's good. Didn't we watch their Netflix special together? At least some of it a while ago?
Yeah, it was a taping of one of their Broadway performances during the Broadway run in 2017.
Yeah, that's right. I know they also briefly turned it into a podcast, but I think that fizzled out fairly quickly.
Yeah, and it was also, I think it was a bit of theirs on SNL, maybe. I don't remember. I just know that like it started before the Broadway thing.
Yes. So John Mulaney, Nick Kroll, they play two old guys.
Oh, yeah. Here it is. It was popularized on Comedy Central's Kroll show.
Yeah. So Nick Kroll and John Mulaney play two old guys, and I don't know, the comedy arises from them being old. The Oh Hellos go? Were they invited to go, or did they just choose to go?
Well, they chose to go.
Okay. And when they're there, what happens? They find out that they're in the audience and say, oh, hello, it's the Oh Hellos, or you know, is there... I mean, obviously, the name is a part of this.
Yeah, basically they decide we're going to go and check it out because it has the same name as them.
Uh-huh.
Maggie actually said that they're always worried that John Mulaney and Nick Kroll are going to get tweets about them and be like, who's this idiot band?
Oh.
Yeah, so they decided to go, and then somehow, Nick Kroll and John Mulaney or the producers found out about it, and so during the show, they put a spotlight on them and invited them up on stage and made some oh hello jokes at them.
That sounds like the worst.
Yeah, and then they got invited backstage for after the performance to talk with John Mulaney and Nick Kroll, which they said was a really cool experience.
I'm sure it would be. How did they feel about that? Just getting invited up on the stage? I don't know.
I don't know. Would you do it?
I don't know. I'd
probably do it.
I'd kind of run away, maybe.
But they're used to being on stage, right? They're performers themselves.
Yeah, but not being like the object of comedy.
Fair enough. Tyler said that Nick Kroll was actually very interested in their music and talked to him a lot about that.
That's cool. I don't buy it. I think this one's a spin too.
Don't buy it?
No, I don't buy it.
3 spins in a row.
Yeah, I think obviously you knew about the show. We watched it. You knew about the Broadway thing.
Sure.
I think it feels too coincidental.
Too coincidental.
And almost like low-hanging fruit to bring it up here.
Fair enough. Go ahead. Lock that in for me.
Okay. Would you like me to?
I would.
Then I will lock in spin. since you told me to.
Yep.
And because it's not true.
Okay. Well, now that you've locked that in, let me just ask you a question. If all of a sudden a Broadway show came out called Spin It, would you not immediately be like, we have to go see this?
Well, that's a good point. Maybe I would.
I just wanted to wait till after you locked in to ask you that question. This is still a spin, though.
Still a spin.
Yeah, still a spin.
I
Still a
knew
spin.
How spun? All the way?
Spun it all the way.
Okay. Rosanna, yeah. Anyway, this is a different episode altogether.
Yeah, no, just, again, I couldn't resist. I mean, come on, they're called Oh Hello.
The low-hanging fruit. The Oh Hellos, yeah.
It was such a low-hanging fruit. Of course I couldn't resist. I tried. It was the last thing I added to my factor spin sheet.
You tried to avoid it, but the pull was too strong.
I did my best.
What would a Broadway show called Spin It be about? Maybe it's like a musical version of the podcast.
Either I or Connor have brought it up before, but spin class.
You think it's a spin class musical?
Yeah.
That'd be awful.
It's actually just a normal musical where the audience is doing spin class while watching it.
It's got to be in a special theater with bikes instead of seats.
Yeah.
And that's how they power the theater and save money on electricity.
Oh.
Like a Black Mirror episode, sure. Well, that's fun.
Anyway, where were we? We got one more. Was that bigger than Citizenship? Probably not. I think we're getting smaller with each of these.
Well, Texas was big. Ireland was smaller. Broadway's even smaller than that as a street.
Yeah.
You know, you could fit a lot of Broadways into Ireland.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't take very much Texas toast to cover Broadway at all, relative to the state of Texas.
Well, then I'm really curious to know how much Texas Toast it's going to take to deal with this next fact. One of their live performances got very wet.
Very wet?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Were they performing near water?
They sure were.
I guess, at some point, they had to have been. Even if they didn't start near water. Obviously, if they ended up wet, water was near them at some point. Were they on a boat at SeaWorld? You know, what's the situation?
Nope, not on a boat. Not at SeaWorld.
In a place with fire sprinklers?
Wow! I can't believe... Wow, okay. Yeah.
Well, those are like the three most likely options.
I don't know about that, but sure. You know, maybe it just rained. I mean...
I guess it could have just rained. True.
I'm impressed. Okay, yeah. The fire alarm was triggered, and the sprinklers went off.
Uh-oh. That's never good. Was there a real fire? Or did somebody pull it or bump it? Some technical malfunction?
Well, there was like smoke that was detected that like triggered the smoke detector, which then instantly triggered the sprinklers in the venue.
Okay. So it could have been anything.
Yeah, maybe it was, I don't know. I guess for all I know, maybe it was a faulty detector. That's just what they said in the radio interview, that the sprinklers were triggered by a smoke detector in the venue.
Interesting. What happened? Did their stuff get ruined? Were they able to get out in time? Some stuff can get wet.
I don't think they got out in time with, it wasn't like the sprinklers kicked on and they're like, oh no, we gotta get out of here before we get wet. I think they got wet.
Okay.
I don't know if anything was ruined. Just that was their most chaotic performance when asked what their most chaotic performance was.
Why would they be asked what their most chaotic performance was? It's a fun story.
Yeah.
I just don't know what line of questioning leads you to that. They don't seem like a particularly chaotic band.
I don't know. Well, you mentioned that they're known for their live shows. Maybe that's what led them down that path.
That's true.
They talked about some weird stuff in this interview.
Yeah? Like what?
Well, I don't know. Maybe not weird. So Tyler and Maggie are both, as you probably could guess, mythology nerds.
Sure could have guessed, yeah.
So they did a lot of stuff talking about mythology. They talked about the Oh Hello Broadway play. They talked about Ireland's citizenship. They talked about, all of my facts have come from this radio interview.
Interesting. That's kind of wild.
Everything that I've mentioned thus far has been talked about on that radio interview.
Oh, that's so good. That means you found one thing, but you've turned everything else into spin, kinda.
So did I do that on this one?
I don't know.
For an all spins week?
I wish I had said spin on the first one, because I'd feel a lot more comfortable right now.
Yeah, this is for 50-50, or you finally getting a win.
Drake should have been a win. A wet performance. This has to happen to someone, right? I feel like I don't ever hear about this happening, but it has to have happened to someone.
Has to have.
Yeah. Okay, I think this one's gonna be an all spins week. I'm gonna say this one is also a spin.
An all spins week?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that based on the fact you think it's a spin, or are you trying to play the odds here, like playing sometimes you try to play the game more than play the fact?
No, it's hard to play the fact, because it's totally possible How big was this venue? Did they say? Do you know? Was it like a small theater?
I don't know.
Would have been cooler if they were at SeaWorld. Right in front of Shamu.
According to you, that's the second most likely way to get wet.
I mean, it's possible. I guess I didn't think about rain. I think this is just a spin.
Fair enough.
I mean, all the other things from this alleged radio interview have not been true.
It's true. Maybe the radio interview doesn't even exist.
It could not. I don't know.
Well, for the win, this is...
Say spin. Say spin.
Do you want me to?
I mean, I'd like you to.
Okay, then yeah, I'll say it because you asked me to. A spin!
Yeah, but are you saying it because I asked you to or because it's actually a spin?
No, because you asked me to.
Is it actually a spin?
Oh, yeah, it's also actually a spin, but I only said
yes.
a spin because you asked me to.
Okay, thank goodness. The dry spell has been broken. My first win since Soundgarden. I mean, Connor won during the strike episode. Wow.
Yeah, but that doesn't really count for you.
No, it doesn't. But it counts for the hosts.
Yeah, the hosts weren't on a dry spell, but you were.
Wow, I needed that point back. Awesome.
This is the only one not really true from that radio interview, but it kind of is.
All their performances have stayed dry.
Well, originally, I was going to make this a tropical storm.
Oh.
Made landfall during one of their performances. Flooded the venue.
If you know a tropical storm's coming, that's a wild time to try and have a performance.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're not wrong. They talked about hurricanes and tropical storms growing up in Texas in the interview, so I was trying to make something out of that. But then you said sprinklers, and I immediately was like, that's way better. And so I acted as if it was astonishing that you guessed it, and then tried to cover up that that's what I did.
It was a little over the...
Well, yeah, I realized I maybe went a little over the top, but then I tried to like cover that up by just making fun of you for not saying rain was one of the most common ways to get wet.
Well, it is one of the most common ways to get wet, but not necessarily at concerts.
Could have been an outdoor performance. I just like that your ways that they could have gotten wet went on a boat, SeaWorld, and then sprinkler.
Well,
system.
I was thinking what's factor spin worthy. I mean, it rained at an outdoor show. I mean, that's cool, sure. I don't know if that's like factor spin levels of final ramp fact, you know? It's way more factor spinish if they're at SeaWorld or on a boat.
Well, unfortunately, I got you on one, where it would have been a shutout week.
Yeah, that was a really mundane spin.
I know.
It was a very good, well-constructed, crafty spin.
I felt the Irish one was also well-constructed.
It was, yeah. Thus always to Tyrants, mixtaper. I'm the winner today.
I don't even know what that means.
Thus always to Tyrants?
No, you winning.
Oh, me winning? It means that I scored more points than you.
Impossible. It's not what the script says.
It's possible today.
Everybody knows this podcast is 100% scripted, but no writer could come up with a catchphrase as catchy as yeah.
And then there he goes, away into the night. He said, oh, A at the start and oh, yeah at the end. Welcome back, Connor. How was your popcorn break?
Oh, man, it was good popcorn.
Awesome.
I added a little extra popcorn flavoring to it.
Yeah. Oh, delicious. Well, without further ado, the script says that we should get into it. Let's talk about the album art. The album cover of Dear Wormwood is really cool.
I thought you were going to forget to say wood there. The way you like enunciated that. I thought you were going to say
No.
Dear Worm.
Dear Worm.
Which is a hilarious title for a album.
It is. Actually, I'm kind of surprised that the worm name fact didn't come back up. This would have been a sneaky one for that.
They're not big enough to have a worm named after them.
It would have been actually kind of obvious. Retrospectively, Dear Worm. Anyway.
Give him some credit.
No, not Dear Worm, Dear Wormwood. It looks like a letter.
So it looks like a letter, a really square letter.
It does. It's got stamps and
With way too much postage.
it's prepared to ship. I mean, look, if each one of these tracks is a letter, that's 12 letters. That's probably not enough postage.
Maybe. You're right.
I'm curious about the Roman numerals around the one stamp. They count from 5 to 11, and then there's a 0, and then it goes back to 1. I wonder what that's all about.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Probably something mythology related, or like the mixtaper brought up. They've done a lot of deep dives into mythology for their albums.
That's true. I kind of like the gargoyles and laurel crowns on the other stamps. Those are neat.
Yeah. I also just like that it's a green envelope.
Yeah. It feels fitting for an album that draws so much from like natural imagery and willow trees and nature. It just kind of matches the style and the vibe of the album, which is a huge benefit.
You know what really put me in a good vibe for listening to a concept album?
What's that?
The Prelude.
Oh, yes. Every good album needs a nice prelude, right? A good kickoff to the concept.
That Prelude.
Sure.
That I cover everybody.
Yeah. It's an instrumental track.
An instrumental track with some oohs and some humming.
That's right. One thing that I didn't catch about the Prelude, and I'm sure you didn't either, as we didn't listen to the first album, is it echoes the last song from their first record.
Whoa!
Yeah, the song's called The Truth is a Cave, and I think that's really awesome at establishing this as like a sequel album to The Deep Dark Valley.
Is that a reference to Allegory of a Cave?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it might be about truth and what's real and what you believe. Yeah, absolutely, I think it is. The lyrics read, I was young and naive, I was told, so I believed. It definitely has those same kind of vibes. But that's the Prelude. Does it get you? I mean, you said it gets you in that folky mood.
Yeah, it's just very ethereal. It draws you in.
Oh, it really does.
Made me intrigued for what was going to come. Again, I didn't really have other than the fact that they were marked as like a folk band, I didn't really have any point of reference for what they were going to sound like.
Yeah. And that's where a Prelude comes in really handy, I think. It just whets your appetite and gets you excited. And I like that it's got such a gradual swell to it. It kind of builds up a lot.
It builds very nicely all the way up, and then the transition, first official song, Bitter Water.
Yeah.
How it just kind of cuts off into banjo. I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like a soft banjo, right?
For a minute, until the chorus comes crashing in.
It was enough to signal, hey, we're leaving the Prelude, but it still was soft enough that it felt like it fit with the first track.
Yeah, like a puzzle piece.
It was like starting up the car. The first track defrosted the windshield, and now we're ready to put it in gear.
I like it. And we put it in gear in just a beautiful way. Bitter Water is one of my favorite songs on the album. And we kick off with it. What a great start.
It's the second most popular track.
Yeah, true. A lot of people's favorite on the album.
Yeah.
And the lyrics are just so poetic. I mean, they sing, the terrible fire of old regret is honey on my tongue, and I know I shouldn't love you, but I do. Like, whoa. Like, you could tell right away we're in for some grade A storytelling.
Yeah.
It feels like a kind of song you would hear diegetically in like an old, I don't know, fantasy movie, right? Like, this is almost a song that they'd pick up and sing in a Lord of the Rings type TV show or something.
Hint, hint, Amazon.
Rings of Power Season 2, get on it. I mean, that'd be cool. I think the lyric, I know I shouldn't love you, but I do, pretty much sums up the sentiment of this song.
Yeah.
All these days of our delights are poison in my veins. It really sets the scene perfectly for this overarching narrative of someone trying to get in touch with and relate to a partner in a relationship that's taken an unhealthy turn. I shouldn't love you. I do love you. I have regrets. Things still feel sweet. Like, there's just this mix to it. There's this tug that you start to feel right from the beginning. You'll bury me beneath the tree I climbed when I was a child. Like, there's this ominous feeling to it, despite the light, floaty, plucky kind of music that I really like. I mean, people love the contrast. I love the contrast.
Yeah. This is also also a hint to the title of the album, I felt like.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
Yeah, saying that I still taste you on my lips, lovely bitter water. Like, wormwood as a plant is like a bitter plant, right? That is used as like a medicine, which is also known to be typically not tasty.
Yeah.
It's almost like that maybe the bitterness could be a reference to wormwood itself.
That's true.
And, you know, wormwood is toxic in large amounts, just like seems like this kind of relationship is. That they know they shouldn't love them, but they do. Felt like there was something there.
Definitely.
You're right. The wordplay is great. Because you say lovely bitter water, the terrible fire of old regret is honey on my tongue. Honey would cure the bitterness, right?
But the fire still burns. Ooh, man.
Yep.
It's advanced.
It's very good. It's very good.
Uh-huh.
Listen, I know last week was last week, and it's in the past, but wordplay like that really just highlights my point of cutting G's off of words to make rhymes over and over isn't as creative as good lyric writing as something like this.
Right. It's hard to compare, yeah.
What is it about folk people liking oh-woes and woes and all that? I mean,
I don't know. It just comes up a lot.
the whole thing about oh-woes got started on Head in the Heart, right?
Yeah. The first kind of folk music that we visited.
Yeah, and here, I mean, the prelude was full of O's, and then the refrain on this one is whoa, oh, oh. Like, they just love it. They can't get enough.
No, I think it just comes from, like, folk tradition, right? This is music that's meant to be, I don't know, sung along with. It's meant to have that element of, like, participation to it traditionally, which I think is really interesting. And I think it just suits the style really well. A lot of these songs kind of feel like they could be played outdoors around a campfire. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people around. It just feels like a communal kind of experience that the OWOs enable you to be a participant in, even if you don't know the words or don't have the personal ties to the experience. You can just still be a part of that expression through syllables, I guess. It's neat. And I love how we move from the big, resounding sounds of Bitter Water, right? It's a song with some oomph, into the softer, way more reserved There Beneath.
But still grounded from track to track by that banjo.
Yes.
It kicks off the song.
It's a very good through thread.
Also, I've noticed they really like trees so far.
Specifically, willow trees. The classic folksy tree. I mean...
Yeah, I mean, just on the last verse of the previous song talked about how he was going to bury the protagonist beneath the tree they climbed as a kid. And now here, the very first line of this one is there beneath the willow tree.
Right. It's tied together.
Sensing some themes.
Mm-hmm. Willow trees, I mean, very symbolic.
Yeah.
Shoot, even the Arcadian Wild references willow trees a lot.
I mean, willow trees can make people understand one another even when they speak different languages.
According to Pocahontas.
Well, I guess technically that was love, but the willow tree was freaking singing about it. They're the one that was explaining it to us.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the other thing that's really interesting is that, like, it's usually a weeping willow, right? So there's that element of sadness and, like, droop. And I don't know. It just puts so much more emotion into the imagery if you consider the weeping willow.
Weeping willow trees are my mother's favorite kind of firework.
Oh, firework was the last word I ever expected to end that sentence. Okay. Well, I love the willow tree as a symbol here because the whole point of the song is that, I sat there and I learned about the way of things. Everything has breath. There's beauty in the way of things. Just like in the existence of the earth, there's this inherent beauty to it. It's very nature focused. There's this really captivating tension in nature that kind of starts to foreshadow where the album's going. Everything's kind of anticipating the end of an era.
Sure.
She talks about being beyond the Palisades. There's a cavalcade. Something's coming. And for now, we're in the beauty of the way of things, but it's not everlasting. There's like a horizon. Something's building and on the way. It's so soft. It's so gentle. And I love some of those major seventh chords in there. I'm a sucker for them.
Mm-hmm. I keep finding myself getting interested in the background vocals and the instruments. Mm-hmm. I just keep getting sucked into those.
Yeah. If you like the background and the instrumentals, I mean, this is an album that you can really indulge in that with. Especially, I mean, the next track kind of serves as another instrumental, more of an interlude, as we get from There Beneath into the next section of the album. It's In the Blue Hours of Morning, so you get plenty of opportunities to indulge in it.
It's true.
All these songs are actually, for the most part, pretty short.
Which interlude did you like better, the prelude or the interlude?
I'm gonna have to give my vote to the prelude.
I agree.
I think the prelude has a lot more going on throughout its minute. Mm-hmm. In the Blue Hours of Morning sounds like what it says it is. It's kind of got this sunrise feel to it. Mm-hmm. Everything's dark and quiet, and then we kind of swell into this brightness at the end, which is a really, really cool idea, a cool way to do this. And it kind of, in a sense, I mean, builds upon the idea of a cavalcade on the Palisade in the last song. This eon, this epoch is coming to an end, and the new era starts to dawn with this sunrise that happens in the blue hours of the morning. And it's fitting, actually, because Wormwood, right, biblically, what C.S. Lewis writes about it as, is the name of a star that is a harbinger that signifies the end times. This is a song of the beginning of the end, which is a theme that gets ground in even stronger in Exeunt, the next track.
The first verse was a bit rough for me.
Really? With the big build-ups at the end of the phrases?
Yeah, at first I was like, oh, and then the second time I was like, ah, and then the third time I was like, ooh, and then by time 4 it's like, okay, are we done with this? Did it a few too many times for my liking. I wanted to get to that first 2 sound just a few lyrics sooner.
I get that. 4 times is kind of a lot, but I think that makes the payoff when they do.
I mean, it did it 5 times. It did 6 times total.
Oh, you're right.
I was just tired of it by time 4.
Well, I think that makes the payoff of when they lock into the beat even better. Because this song has one of the coolest, I think, instrumental lead lines. Do-do-do-do-do. Like that in between is really nice.
Yeah.
And I like the way that the instruments kind of all come in at the end of phrases to just do a big like, ba-na-na-na. Like they hit it big a couple of times, which gives the end of the phrases a little extra punch and power. It kind of fills out the 2.5 minutes of this song really satisfyingly.
The song goes by so fast.
Yeah. Well, especially by the time you get through, those 6, expansive, free-flowing parts.
There's only like a minute left.
There's pretty much a minute and a half left of the song. Yeah. But it is a really captivating song. The title, Exeunt, translated literally means they leave, like a classic stage direction. So it further imparts this idea of the end.
Let's see.
Like Bitter Water, it's kind of about the difficulties that come with finally tearing yourself away from a situation that you've grown so used to. That honey isn't going to save the relationship anymore. This is, I'm out. This is the moment where you're making the break, and it hurts and it's hard, but you got to make it. Because it refers to the old times, right? You were like wine, heady as the fog rolling in, lovely as the song in the air as the wind blows. But then it goes on to explain the departure and all the pains that come with it. The rose is gone from my eyes, so deceiving. I've seen how you hunger, fluttering your lashes like ashes and embers. Everything is like burning down. It's such a good portrayal of this relationship reaching its ultimate end.
Yeah.
I've set my mind and my will. I'm leaving. I'm out. I'm done. And the finality of it, halfway through the album, is really interesting to reach this final point so early. It, kind of is indicative that there's still a lot of story left to come.
After the end.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, you'd think we're hitting the end of this bad relationship. Everything should be happy now. We've realized it was bad. We've broken free of it. And now we're striking out on our own. It should be good days ahead. But we kind of get hit with Caesar, the next track, the darkest sounding of tracks. It's dismal and it's gloomy. This person's moving into their own new eon, alone and afraid, unknown. It's just a very tentative kind of song that doesn't do what you might expect after leaving a bad situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's more reflective of what the reality of it really is. It's good in some ways, but it's very scary in a lot of other ways. What's interesting about Caesar is, at almost 5 minutes, it's one of the longest songs on this album, but it's so lyrically light. And I like the way that it progresses from that uncertainty, that earliness, that pendulum swinging in the beginning, and it kind of gets more intense and faster, and suddenly we're gathering the soldiers, like things start to get triumphant, things start to get better. It's a really pivotal moment for the record in Caesar, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, Caesar was another intriguing one for me. It pulled me in.
Yeah, I think that's how it's meant to feel. I think there's such a lingering tension in Caesar that keeps you on the hook and doesn't ever really resolve. It just keeps you building with it throughout. You don't feel comfortable listening to it. You're on the edge of your seat. So yeah, we're gearing up for this war.
Yeah.
This transitional moment, leaving the bad, headed into the new, with a new champion, a new Caesar leading the way for you. It's a whole new thing. And then we come to the realization that this will end. This is the next track.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because Caesar was kind of sandwiched between two songs, basically titled The End.
Yeah. Yeah.
They exit the stage, Caesar, this is going to end. It's like you're at the end of the freaking play. It's like, everybody, please exit the stage. This is ending. Please.
It's done. Get off.
Why are you still here? Go home.
Yeah. And this will end is kind of just a grim acceptance of that. I'm not afraid to die, right? This might be the end, but I'm not afraid of it because of Caesar, because of the champion that's arisen and stuff. I can hope that there's better things ahead, even though this is the end. Even though this is it for me, there's a time for everything. Good has to balance out with bad. It can't all be roses. Just like the previous era was bitter water, right? It wasn't all thorns. This era can't be all good, but I'm not afraid of it. I'm embracing it.
I like it when the two of them sing together.
Yeah, they have very good complementary voices.
Yeah.
What's funny is I don't think they do it too often on this album. It's usually an accent piece at best. One of them just takes the lead on a given song. But This Will End does a good job at balancing them, I think.
Again, the instruments on this one.
It's great.
Yeah, the way they slowly and subtly build up to that instrumental break at the 2-minute mark, and then they hit that, and it's just this full sound of instruments, and then they bring it in with some more oh-ohs.
You know it.
And some aye-aye-ayes.
Gotta have them.
It's just such a full sound. That's so folky and Celtic.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like some bagpipes need added, and that's like the only thing. It gives me a longing for bagpipes when it hits like its peak at like the 2:15-minute mark or whatever, where like it's like this fly. I just feel like I need to hear some bagpipes pick up on top of it.
That would be kind of interesting. I actually really like that idea. I mean, This Will End kind of serves as a transitional piece, right? I think Exeunt and Caesar went together really well.
Well, is it? Because isn't like the next one, Pale White Horse, a reference to like, isn't that like what Death rides in on, or
Yes.
something like rides in on a pale white horse?
Yes. Yeah, and it goes together. I'm not saying it doesn't fit, but what I'm saying is Exeunt and Caesar are kind of meant to be this duology of I'm breaking free, and then I'm, suddenly trying to get my bearings in a brand new situation. And then This Will End comes in the middle. And then Pale White Horse and Where Is Your Rider kind of work together to form a similar duology, because Pale White Horse kind of sets up, like, where's your rider is the question that you're asking the Pale White Horse eventually.
Right? It's like the Pale White Horse came in but wasn't being ridden.
Yeah, so initially we see the Pale White Horse.
And we're like, oh crap.
Oh crap.
Pale White Horse. We all know what that means.
It means death. Yeah. It's very, explicit. Biblically, the rapture, the end times, whatever, there's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. There's plague and famine and disease. They talk about that directly in this verse. Neither plague nor famine tempered my courage, nor did raids make me cower. Like, I wasn't afraid of anything. I had it. I was rocking this. But then this pale white horse with a crooked smile came, and I knew it was my time. I finally felt this fear.
Hey, narrator, don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Don't look a pale white horse in the mouth.
Yeah, you don't need to see its crooked smile.
Well, this horse was anything but a gift. It kind of sounds like it was more of a curse. Don't look a curse horse in the mouth.
What is a curse but a gift you didn't really want?
That's true. Yeah, all the wars and tension and fears from before kind of culminate in Pale White Horse. It's another slower song, softer song.
Yeah.
I think it's a song that, whereas some of the songs kind of contrast with their lyrics and their themes, with the sound, I think Pale White Horse is a perfect match. Just this tension, this fear, this apprehension.
Yeah.
It matches what you're hearing perfectly.
This was one that I found myself intrigued by the vocals. I really enjoyed Neither Plague. Like the vocal run up to drop back down. I was like, ooh, that was nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. And then, you feel like you're going to die. You're staring down this pale white horse. But then she takes a minute to look around and notices that the pale white horse has no rider.
She stops looking at it at its mouth.
Just, moves up from the crooked smile to the saddle and realizes there is no rider. The horse is riderless. And so while it was kind of scary and shocking initially, they realize that it has no power to actually hurt them. There's no rider. It's just harmless at the end of the day. The presumption is that the horse had a rider to start, but the rider was defeated in battle, and it's no longer a threat, no longer anything. The transition, I think, between Pale White Horse and Where Is Your Rider is a little abrupt.
Yeah, the clapping was a bit abrupt.
It was. And I think it's cool, though, because the clapping, it fits with the rhythm of the song, but you don't know what that rhythm is when you start listening to it. You have to wait for some guitars and some other rhythmic instruments to come in and set the beat and the meter for you to lock in with the clapping. Otherwise, it's kind of ambiguous. And I really like that feeling. Musically, it's a fun trick. And again, just the rawest lyrics for this folky, cheery kind of band, and the triumphant claps and stuff. The shadow of Hades is fading, for he's cast down Leviathan, the tyrant, and the horse and rider. Good grief. It's so intense.
Yeah.
Bury me as it pleases you, lover, at sea or deep within the catacomb. These bones never rested while living. How can they languish in repose? Wow, it's just on another level entirely.
Yeah.
I think this is the kind of thing that if you could show this to C.S. Lewis, I feel like he'd be so proud of this album. So proud to have inspired this with his work.
Yeah.
It's a fitting tribute. Well crafted. Where Is Your Rider, I think, is a song that's important for the story, and it's great at what it does. It's not as memorable to me as a lot of the other tracks, just in its melody and stuff.
It's interesting because the ending of the Pale White Horse says that she recognizes the rider, the last line.
A face I'd seen before?
Right?
Well, it could be the face of the horse.
Well, no, because it says it was a pale white horse with a charisma. I knew it was time. It was the raging storm of a foreign war and a face I'd seen before.
Horses have faces. That's why that joke about the horse in the bar, why the long face, that's why that works.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know, it could be either. And again, the implication is that the rider gets defeated in battle. So, at one point, the horse does have a rider.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if it was implying that she knew
death.
Well, right, there's this whole thing with this lover, right, from the beginning tracks that's woven in this, and then Where Is Your Rider? It even says bury me as it pleases you, lover. That's seared deep within the catacombs. So it's is death the lover that she knew was no good for her, but she was gonna love anyways, right? Of course, because we said earlier, right, I shouldn't love you, it's not good for me, and I made the whole connection that bitter water, right, could be wormwood, which is toxic at high doses, it could kill you at high doses, and she knows death, the writer, and it's her lover, and I don't know, it just felt like this was all interestingly woven together.
Yeah, it is, definitely. And I think you're spot on. The lover is supposed to be death. in this situation. Something that you love and pursue even though you know you shouldn't.
But then when it gets to the "Where is your writer" section of the "Where is your writer" song, and it says the shadow of Hades is fading, so it's like the good triumphed and she's safe. Or did she die even though good? I'm trying to figure out, is the narrator. I say she because it's
a woman singing, yeah.
Yeah.
But it alternates.
Is the narrator safe and lived through this quote-unquote war with death, even though death has been defeated? Or was the narrator a casualty of this war? That even though death was defeated in the end, the narrator was
taken down as a part of it?
Yeah, one of the sacrifices.
No, I think the whole thing is that the narrator lives because of the champion that shows up in Caesar, and because of what we get to in the next track, Soldier, Poet, King. There's a soldier who carries a mighty sword.
Yes, you're right. There's one of those things that just one listen wasn't quite enough to get the full... It was hard to take notes on what I liked and didn't like, but also follow the story.
Well, yeah, I definitely understand that. Soldier, Poet, King, I mean, is the song that hooked me on this album. You can't get enough of this one. Oh, wow.
Oh, this one is so jaunty.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the part where I think you feel the Celtic...
From the very beginning, there will come a soldier who carries a mighty sword. Like, it just feels like it's like they're at like a tavern partying after the war.
Yeah. Oh-Lei-Oh-Lai, oh Lord. I love it.
Yeah.
It's kind of this 3 successive verses, right? There's a soldier verse who carries a mighty sword to tear down the city. There's a poet who uses his words to take down enemies and just craft like thought, right? Like a philosopher. And then King.
Okay, I know this is stupid.
Yeah.
I know this is stupid. But there was a small part of me that wanted verse 2 to go, there will come a poet whose weapon is his ward. Just so it would rhyme with sword.
What?
Like, it's still the word, but she, like, pronounce it wrong.
Why?
I don't know. They're just talking about there will come a soldier who carries a mighty sword. Blah, 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 blah. So there will come a poet whose weapon is his ward.
Ward? No, it's word.
Grossly. Not. Yeah, I still want it to be the word. I just want it to be pronounced insanely wrong.
Sure.
Like we've said before where people have like pronounced the words weird to make them rhyme.
Yeah, just last week with vitamin.
Yeah, vitamin, right? But this one, it just really made me laugh to think about pronouncing word as ward just to make it rhyme with both lord and sword.
Yeah. And thorn. I mean, the third verse talks about a ruler who comes in. It's the same thing. It's
there will come a ruler whose brow is laid in thord.
Thord?
Just pronounce the N as D.
No. Yeah. Well, this whole album is obviously drawn heavily on C.S. Lewis and a lot of biblical concepts of the end of the world. And Soldier, Poet, King.
Well, I mean, C.S. Lewis pulled heavily from biblical.
Exactly.
Like they're very closely related. It's not like, wow, I can't believe they matched up C.S. Lewis in biblical references?
No, I'm not saying that.
Whoa!
I'm not saying that. It's obviously very easy to do.
You could almost not make any biblical references yourself and only reference C.S. Lewis and still be called out as a biblical reference because of how deeply ingrained biblical references are into C.S. Lewis's work.
No doubt. Well, especially Dear Wormwood.
Yeah.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is like kind of an oblique allegory, right? But I mean, Dear Wormwood, it's very explicitly like this is a riff on Christian theology. And Soldier, Poet, King kind of takes the apocalypse they've described up to this point and punctuates it with this biblical prophecy that mirrors like Jesus and the rise of a new kingdom and stuff. You know, you restructure the world after this apocalypse under the Caesar, under the new champion, the soldier, the poet, the king. Mm-hmm. And it's very triumphant after we've been through everything we've been up through to this point, the breaks and the bitter waters and the impending death. This is like the moment of relief for the album.
Yeah.
And that makes it really, really powerful. And how do Oh-Lei-Oh-Lais compare to Oh Woes?
I like them.
I like them a lot too. It's not unique to this song, right? It's definitely in a lot of other more Celtic style songs, but it's unique for us. It's rare for most popular American music.
It just had such a like a taverny pub, or I guess for Ireland like a pub sound to it.
Yeah,
especially just the Oh-Lei-Oh-Lai, oh Lord. Mm-hmm. Also, thought it was interesting that verse 3 got an extra line. The first 2 verses was just, you know, the setup for who the person is, what they're going to do, the Olays, and then what they're going to do again. But the third verse, 2 lines to set up who it is, a description of how they're covered in oil, a couple Olays, and then only 1 verse or 1 line of what they're going to do. That was interesting, the difference in structure for that third verse.
And it's a callback to the soldier characteristic. I mean, we talk about a ruler with a thorn-laden brow who tears the city down. It kind of reinforces that it's like the same person with the same mission, I guess. Soldier, poet, king is wrapped up in one figure, and it's not three separate individuals.
Yeah.
And I think the last tearing your city down does a lot to reemphasize that aspect.
Yeah. Almost makes me wish that verse 2 had a he will tear your city down.
Ooh.
To ground it.
I like that.
Because the first 1 and 3 do, but...
Yeah. I just think Soldier, Poet, King ends up being a really powerful growth moment for the speaker, and I like that a lot.
Then it's time for a title track.
Title track indeed. We're near the conclusion of the epic tale, and it's time for the narrator to take stock of themselves, what they've learned on this journey, and what they now can aspire towards in light of this new epoch that's dawned so violently and suddenly and marvelously. Suddenly we get to figure out what we've been living through. I know who you are now. I've recognized the influence that you've had on my life, and I know who I am is the triumphant ending, right? They tell the devilish negative influence they're breaking away from. I'm aware of you now. I know all that you've made of me. I name you my enemy. And then they come to the realization, like, I want to be more than this devil inside of me. So I know who I am. I know what my identity is because I've been through this. And I'm entering into this new phase of my life a lot more self-confident and reassured in who I am. I think we get an accordion in this song a little bit, which is cool.
Is that what that is?
It's quiet, but it's there. I think so. The chords that happen behind I know who you are now, especially the first one that's really quiet. I think I can hear a little accordion happening.
I really like Wormwood. Again, it's a very well-constructed story that they tell. Mm-hmm. Like, the first verse really sets up how Wormwood has been corrupting the narrator, right?
Yes. The things that I believed in, you taught me to call them escapes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, get the catchy little hook of I know who you are now, I know who you are, I know who you are now. And then the second verse is like further expands upon that relationship, but like in a new way, like in a progression, not just giving more examples of how they were corrupted by Wormwood, but like it talks about, I saw a brighter world for myself, and then in my hour of weakness, you were there as my courage failed me, and it builds upon that story. It's like a progression of time.
Yeah. Steadily becoming what I hate is the last line of the second verse, and that pretty much sums up what the second verse describes.
Yeah.
Like losing myself to this worldview that you've imposed on me.
Yeah, and then verse 3 is like him finally breaking free of that, or claiming that he wants to break free of it, right? I've always known you, but now that I understand you, we're through.
Yeah, I know how to avoid you, basically. I've learned your ways, and I know what is better.
And then it does that really great thing of them flipping it from talking about Wormwood to talking about themselves with the I know who I am now instead of I know who you are now.
Yeah.
Which is just the icing on the cake. I mean, mwah, chef's kiss.
Absolutely.
I love a good word switcheroo like that.
I do, yeah.
So clever. I know who I am now and all that you've made of me. I know who you are now, and I name you my enemy. It's so good.
It's really great. I know, it's such a strong ending. From the last, minute 4 onto minute 5:15, the rest of the song.
Yeah, again, it's the freaking longest song on the album by a mile.
But it's deserved.
But it's still, it's deserved, and it just goes by so fast.
It earns, and it needs every second that it takes.
Yeah.
And I love how we end with I want to be more than this devil inside of me, and progress into the last kind of denouement of the album, right? This last little bit, this last pair of tracks kind of makes another duology, along with Exeunt, Caesar, Pale White Horse, Where's Your Rider? Then we get Danse Macabre and Thus Always to Tyrants as we finally vanquish the demons inside of us and grow from it. Danse Macabre is an instrumental. The title translates from French to Dance of Death, and it's a concept that's been around for a long time. The song itself is from 1875, but the concept of a dance with death actually dates back to sometime around the mid-15th century. And it's meant to be a grim reminder about how death is universal. It gets everybody sometime, right? Memento mori kind of stuff.
We're all gonna die.
Yeah, we're all gonna die.
No use in fighting it.
No. People actually used to dress up as skeletons and corpses from all walks of life and parade around villages in a proto-Halloween tradition annually. There's festivals about dancing with the dead and celebrating death, expecting death. There's a lot of complicated history.
I mean, that just sounds like a classic Wednesday the 13th kind of thing for the mixtaper.
Does he celebrate Wednesday the 13th?
Yeah.
I thought it was Friday the 13th. Why Wednesday?
Well, that's mainstream. Everybody does that.
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday the 13th is for, Friday the 13th is for monsters. Wednesday the 13th is for dastards.
Okay, sure. Whatever. Why not? So Danse Macabre is an interesting concept to put here. I mean, we've danced with death. We've faced it head on, and we've moved past it, and are now, killing death like we saw in Where's Your Rider. And this whole saga ends very triumphantly, with thus always to tyrants. In the end, good always triumphs. You may recognize the phrase as sic semper tyrannis in Latin.
Yep.
That phrase, it's historically been used as a rallying cry to hold abusive leaders accountable. Death's always coming. You're going to get what you deserve. That's what tyrants get. You may recognize it also as the thing that John Wilkes Booth yelled after he killed Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, but that was because he was referencing Brutus and Caesar.
He was. Yeah, he definitely had a misunderstanding of tyranny.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that on the podcast.
No, we don't. I just think that's probably the most famous usage of the phrase that people have probably heard of.
Yeah.
And here, in this song, it's extra ironic because death came to the ultimate tyrant. Like, death itself was the tyrant ruling over this person's life. And it's the ultimate moment of triumph for the album and for its heroes. Do not weep, do not wail, I'm coming home to you. Let the ransomed be free, let the valleys awake. Again, a callback to like Deep Dark Valley, right? If this is a sequel album to that, they bring it full circle here at the very end. In the wind that remakes all that time has worn away.
This is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear, as we move into this final spin here, what your thoughts are on this album. Because coincidentally, I have recently organically stumbled across a kind of folk-like album that is very steeped in mythology and stuff much like this album is.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't know, I've been considering presenting it to you because I know you like a deep cut, meaningful album.
I do. They're a lot of fun.
And so this will kind of gauge for me where that one might end up on your list.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting thing to see.
It's funny that I've discovered that within the last couple weeks, and here you are bringing me one that's very similar but yet very different at the same time.
Oh, I'm sure. I really like Thus Always to Tyrants. It's the perfect end for the album. And I like that the last little tag on this kind of leaves the door open to uncertainty a little bit. Like, they beat the demon, but then we have to ask the questions. Where I go, will you still follow? Will you leave your shaded hollow? Like, have I grown? How will wrestling with these demons haunt me and affect me in my future choices and relationships? Well, shall we final spin?
Let's do it.
Okay, final spin time. I think this is a really interesting story. I think it's really cool. It's told through really, really vivid lyrics in this dark fantasy kind of backdrop. There's devils and demons, kings and soldiers and wars and quests of self-discovery. And it just has such a unique vibe to it. In addition to being a really thorough metaphor and fleshed out concept, they execute it with a really interesting style that I like.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things, the album is thematically dense, but lyrically sparse. A lot of these songs are short. A lot of them have repeated phrases and a lot of oh-whoa vocals to fill time and space. So they have to make a lot of headway with what they do allow themselves lyrically. And I think they do a good job with it. But you can't waste a syllable of actual words, right? I don't think they do. I think the album kind of feels sonically a little disjointed as a concept in a way that I'm not sure I fully can put my thumb on.
Okay.
I don't know how to say that.
I felt that too, so that's good that I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
It felt like we were circling a lot of the same motifs and a lot of the same concepts, but we were like doing this weird like circling the drain thing where it felt very deja vu-y at times. Like, how many of them are related to like the end or killing death or die? It's like we just kept coming around different ways to that same topic, but like it didn't necessarily always succinctly fit exactly how I thought it would.
No, you're right. I think until we hit...
we hit exit the stage on track 5 and there were still 13 more songs about the end. Basically everything from track 5 on was a different form of something ending.
I think honestly that's it. From track 5 to about Soldier Poet King is where it breaks. But you're right. A lot of those songs feel similar.
Yeah. And
they all kind of take a different angle and tell a different facet of the story, but they're kind of indistinct.
And it's like, are we supposed to It's so weird, right? Because Caesar, track 6, that's supposed to be, if I'm understanding the metaphor right, the concept album right, that's like the introduction of the hero that's going to come defeat death. But then like we end on a track titled after the phrase famous for killing Caesar. Like did we kill the good guy in the end? Like, what happened?
No, I think that's just I think that's the phrase is known. I think the tyrant is obviously, it's the devil character.
I guess, yeah.
It is a little confusing, I guess, to, have a Caesar that's not the one that's killed in 6th Emperor Tyrannus fashion. I think Caesar should go in a different spot. It should kind of go, maybe you could split Pale White Horse and Where's Your Rider to introduce the character that's going to take out the rider. Like, Caesar shows up in 6 and is kind of dormant until Where Is Your Rider?
Yeah, I would almost go, because especially thematically, I think it works too. So you can go Pale White Horse to introduce the villain, right? Of this final climactic battle. And then you got like this haunting Caesar to go right after that. That is like there's something brewing, right? There's some force stirring that's gonna be bad news for the rider of the Pale White Horse, right?
Yeah.
And then you could almost go Soldier, Poet, King next because of how different the song feels stylistically. Because the words, again, are like, the whole point of the words of Soldier, Poet, King is, hey, here comes a soldier with a mighty sword, and he's also a poet whose weapon is his word, and he's a ruler, and he's going to kick your butt. He's gonna slay you with his tongue. He's gonna smite you. You feel like you need that before Where Is Your Rider, which is about the death of death.
Right.
You know? So I'd almost go in that order, potentially. Pale White Horse, Caesar, Soldier, Poet, King, Where's Your Rider?
I like that.
Maybe.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways that you can make it fit together.
It's a good ebb and flow of styles and tempos. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to, a few more listens, maybe.
I think all the pieces are here.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it. Yeah. So for me, score-wise, I'm giving it an 84 for music. I think when this album is good, it's great. I think there are a lot of moments that are essential to the storytelling and to the vibe of the album that I kind of forget musically. Stuff that happens on, the early parts of Caesar or Exeunt, or in different parts of Where's Your Rider? But the hooks of those songs always stick and always land, and they're very effective. So I like that too. Giving the lyrics a 91.
Well, that's exactly what I thought you'd give those.
Well, good. Yeah, you're spot on this time. I'm giving the instruments of production an 86. There's a lot of great instrumentals here. A lot of interesting choices that I really like. And diverse instruments too. Stuff you don't hear every day, like that accordion. Overall vibe, giving it an 88. I love the concept. It's just that thing I can't put my thumb on. That's it. That's the last missing bit. So I'm giving Dear Wormwood an overall score of 88.1, which puts it at number 175 on the ranking list.
So I need my folk concept album to be 75 spots better to crack the top 100.
Yeah.
If I decide to bring it. That gives me something as I'm listening to it more. Do I feel it's 75 points better than this one?
75 places better. 75 points better 75. Would be like 150. So,
well, maybe that's what I'm aiming for.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that puts it for me below George Strait. And if you can even compare the two in your mind, above My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. They don't have many similar points of reference, but that's where it goes.
I mean, they're both fantasies.
Oh, you're right. Fantasy is the through thread here, but that's me. How about you?
I like it.
I love it.
I was intrigued.
Intrigued is a fun adjective.
It's so interesting because I think there's only a couple of songs that I will listen to that I'll ever put on like a singles playlist of mine. But I do see myself returning to the whole album to listen to. I feel like this is one, sometimes we talk about songs that are better as singles but don't necessarily contribute as well to the album vibe. I think this is the exact opposite. I think all these songs get a little weaker without the other songs around them.
It is truly a concept album through and through. Yeah.
So, I don't see myself coming back to a lot of these songs unless I'm coming back to the whole album, which I'll have to be in a specific mood for to want to do that.
Yeah. Well, that's part of its thing is, how do you listen to a song like Where's Your Rider without the context of Pale White Horse, right?
Yeah.
Or how do you listen to a song like Exeunt without the context of There Beneath and Bitter Water? It doesn't function the same.
And I think that's why something like Soldier, Poet, King or Bitter Water or Dear Wormwood has significantly higher plays on Spotify than the rest of the album because those ones are easier to listen to without the context of the story.
Yes, totally.
And so my Connor top 3 in album order. Honorable mention off the bat again to Prelude.
Ooh, that was a really good scene setter then.
Yeah. Then we're going to go into Bitter Water,
Absolutely. One of the best.
Soldier Poet King,
Oh.
and Dear Wormwood.
Oh, okay.
The three I just named.
Big skip in the middle, but I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't differentiate. There was a lot of stuff I liked in there. Just couldn't not pick those. And I thought about taking extra, but then it was like, how do I differentiate? Like, how do you pick Pale White Horse or Where Is Your Rider, right? How can you have one without the other, kind of like you just said?
Right. You can't.
And so to make it easier on future Connor, I decided to stick just to my 4.
Okay, that's reasonable. Plus, next week is the big 150, so you never know.
Oh, that's true. As for a score, this one's getting 8 Oh-Lei-Oh-Lais out of 10.
Ooh, lovely. Fun unit.
Which I guess answers your earlier question of Oh-Lei-Oh-Lais versus Oh-Woes. Apparently, 8 Oh-Lei-Oh-Lais are more than 6 Oh-Woes. Is that what I gave in the heart? A 6?
You did give him a 6 OWOs, yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't feel comfortable giving it a 9 off of one listen where I felt like I didn't necessarily 100% get the metaphor. And like we both kind of said, there was something off about the vibe or the continuity of the album that I need to dig into a little bit. So who knows? This is where the score is locked in. For the podcast, I'm happy with it, but in my own personal opinion, it may go up or down or stay the same upon further listens.
It could change.
Could change.
Yeah. Where in the 8s are we putting it?
I don't even know.
Uh-oh.
No, it's going relatively high.
Okay. I like that. That is always fun for an album that I'm kind of testing out on you.
I think it's going right above I Like It When You Sleep, For You Are So Beautiful and Yet So Unaware of It.
Whoa.
By the 1975.
I'm honestly impressed you remembered the full title.
Of course I remember it. I have a perfect memory.
Yeah, sure. Who's Quincy Jones?
We've never talked about him. I'd remember.
I'd remember him. Yeah. That's interesting. That is very high. I like that.
That could be some recency bias. It's been a while since I've listened to some of the stuff it beat out.
That's true.
I can acknowledge that.
It's a little bit below Welcome by the Arcadian Wild. That's topping your 8s right now.
Yeah.
But I think that's fair. I mean, I'd agree with that ranking.
Well, cool.
Yeah, your folk albums aren't clumped up like everything else you've got.
No, well, you can't clump folk. It runs wild and free.
Yeah, it does.
Free range folk is what I got going on.
Free range folk. I like it. It grazes.
What are we thinking for playlist pick?
Ugh, playlist picks are hard. What are you thinking?
I think I gotta go Dear Wormwood.
Really? That's not where I thought you'd go.
Where'd you think I would go?
I thought you'd go more for a Bitter Water or a Soldier Poet King.
I liked Soldier Poet King, but it's so short.
It is short.
I mean, Dear Wormwood, like we talked about when we got to the song.
I know who I am. I know who you are.
It earns every second of the 5 minutes and 16 seconds it takes up.
It does.
And yeah, that I know who I am now hook at the end, the little twist.
Yeah.
And I think it fully encompasses the story.
It does.
You could almost get the entire story just by listening to this song, right? The first verse sets up this relationship between the narrator and the lover / death. Maybe they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. And then by the end of it, they've broken free of it, right? So it like tells you the whole story very succinctly.
You're right. That's a great point. I'm also kind of leaning for a different pick from Bitter Water and Soldier Poet King, the two most popular. I'm kind of leaning towards They're Beneath.
Oh.
I think it's so beautifully written. I think there's beauty in the way of things. It's such a peaceful image. It's such a gentle song. It shows off their instrumentals really well. And it's got that willow tree symbolism. I really like it a lot. I think I'm going to lock it in. We'll take a really unexpected for me, I think, pair of songs in They're Beneath and Dear Wormwood.
Yeah, They're Beneath is not what I expected you to pick either.
No, I know.
But cool.
Absolutely. Really cool. This is a fun one. It's always fun to get a good metaphorical album and just really be able to tear into it, you know? Some albums kind of come across as a little surface level, right? But I love an album where you get to get out the shovel and really just dig into it. But that's going to do it for episode 149. Tune in next week for the big Spin It 150th anniversary.
Woohoo! Almost to a new year, too. I mean, year of healing coming to an end very rapidly.
I know. I feel like we've done a lot of healing in the year of healing. But that's a thing we can assess in a couple weeks when we get to the finale. In the meantime, stay updated. Don't miss any of the fun stuff we do around the 150th episode by following us on socials. You can find us on Instagram at SpinItPodOfficial and on X at SpinItPod. You can find Connor here, and you can find us on the web at www.spinitpod.com. Tune in next week to hear Connor say the following silly phrase.
The Twitter fail whale is infamous. The whale that shows up whenever things go wrong on Twitter. There's a fail whale fan club. I know the Mixtaper's a member of that.
Wasn't that funny?
Just the best.
Just the best. Tell a friend who doesn't know how to ride a horse about the podcast this week.
That's not where I was going to go with horse-related tell-a-friends.
Tell a friend who is a horse.
No, I was going to say tell a friend with a crooked smile.
Oh, crooked smiled friend.
But don't look at him in the mouth.
Oh, that's kind of mean.
It is kind of mean. Just tell a friend who you think is pale like a white horse. Needs to go get some sun.
Also kind of mean. Tell your jockey friends about Spin It.
Oh, go hunt down a jockey. Go promote this episode amongst the jockey community.
I wanna see people listening to this episode at the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah.
A lot of pale white horses there. We all know where their riders are, though. You can see them. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, we'll see you next week. And until episode 150 and beyond, keep spinning.
Little Buzz Lightyear there.
Oh, you're right. It was a little Buzz Lightyear.
To 150 and beyond.
It kind of rhymes with infinity. How much Texas toast do you think someone could eat over the duration of this episode?
Well, I've been doing a little bit of research. I don't know about over the course of this episode. I guess that depends on how dedicated they are.
How fast you can eat Texas toast, yeah. But did you do the numbers for Texas toast?
Well, I've done some research.
Oh, no.
I've spent a good chunk of this episode just trying to see if anybody has measured Texas toast.
Why would anybody have done that?
Well, it's the internet. You never know. I found some stuff talking about the thickness of Texas toast. It usually ranges between 3/4 and 1 inch thick, twice as thick as standard bread. And then I have regular bread, so if we're saying Texas toast is the size of regular bread, I can easily measure that right now.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, the average size of a piece of Texas toast that I measured to the nearest half inch, just to keep the math easy, I got 3.5 inches by 4.5 inches size, one slice.
Okay.
And the Texas toast I had was about 3/4 of an inch thick. Not that that really matters, but just so you're aware that Texas is being covered in 3/4 of an inch thick toast. Anyway, so if you do the math there, that gives you the area of a piece of Texas toast is approximately 15.75 inches squared. Okay.
Okay.
And if you then convert that from square inches to square feet, you get 0.109375 square feet is equal to 15.75 square inches. Now, if you look up the square footage of Texas, you get...
You probably should have gone for, like, bigger units. How many square feet are in a square mile?
Yeah, well, that was just going to make that number even smaller, right?
Sure. We could have just done how many pieces of toast are in a square foot. You could have gone bigger and met in the middle.
Yeah, I could have, but I didn't.
Touche.
I got that Texas is approximately 261,797 square miles. Okay. So converting square miles to square feet gave you a square footage of 1,000 million billion 7,487,603,500,000 square feet.
What? 7 trillion square feet?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Is the size of Texas. And again, to remind you, we're looking at 0.109375 square feet for each piece of Texas toast. Or as you just asked, it would take to do a full square footage. That's approximately 9.25 pieces of Texas toast in a square foot.
Mm-hmm. Long outro.
Long story short, if you then take that square footage of Texas and divide it by the square footage of a piece of Texas toast, or as they would call it, just toast, you get 6.8458089 times 10 to the 13th pieces of Texas toast.
13?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of Texas toast.
Good thing the rest of the world is smaller.
Yeah.